The moment large systems stop working, the meaning of wealth changes faster than most people can comprehend. One-day value is defined by digital balances, market indexes, and electronic transactions flowing invisibly through global financial networks. The next day, those systems can become irrelevant if the infrastructure that supports them fails. Banks require electricity, telecommunications, and stable data centers to process transactions. Credit card networks depend on continuous communication between merchants and financial institutions. Even physical currency relies on functioning supply chains and public confidence to maintain value. When those layers of stability weaken simultaneously during a systemic disruption, society begins recalculating what is truly valuable. In that moment, wealth stops being an abstract number and becomes something far more concrete: the ability to solve urgent human problems. The danger most people underestimate is not merely economic collapse, but the speed at which value systems reorganize when infrastructure breaks down. During stable periods, people measure wealth through financial instruments, investment portfolios, and long-term economic growth. But under crisis conditions, the hierarchy of value compresses dramatically toward basic survival needs. Food, water, energy, medicine, and information suddenly carry more immediate importance than distant assets or digital accounts. This transformation does not happen because society becomes primitive, but because human physiology and physical reality impose non-negotiable priorities. A community without clean water cannot sustain life regardless of how many bank accounts exist within it. Understanding how value shifts during systemic stress requires examining the science of scarcity. Economists define value through supply and demand, but during infrastructure failure, supply chains fragment while demand for essential resources rises sharply. The result is an environment where certain practical items become far more valuable than they were during normal conditions. These items are not luxury goods or status symbols. They are tools, materials, and resources that restore stability when systems fail. The individuals who possess them gain something far more powerful than money: the ability to provide solutions. Yet many people misunderstand this concept because they imagine collapse scenarios through the lens of dramatic fiction rather than logistical reality. They picture chaotic environments where traditional economics disappear completely. In truth, human societies rarely abandon trade or exchange systems even during severe disruptions. Instead, they adapt. When formal markets stop functioning, informal economies emerge quickly. Goods and services begin circulating through barter, local trade networks, and community exchange. Value does not disappear. It simply reorganizes around items that directly address survival challenges. The hidden science behind these improvised economies lies in how human communities stabilize themselves during emergencies. Anthropologists studying disaster recovery repeatedly observe the same pattern. People begin exchanging resources almost immediately after major disruptions. Individuals with useful supplies or skills provide them to others in return for something they need. This exchange system gradually forms a local market structure. Even in environments where national currencies or banking systems are temporarily unavailable. What determines who benefits from this process is not previous financial wealth but possession of scarce, high-demand resources. Evidence of this phenomenon appears throughout modern disaster history. After major hurricanes, earthquakes, and prolonged blackouts, informal trading networks frequently emerge before formal aid systems fully arrive. During the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, for example, many communities relied heavily on shared resources and local exchanges, while infrastructure recovery was still underway. Generators, fuel, clean water, and medical supplies became the most sought-after items. Those who had access to them were able to support neighbors, build cooperative relationships, and in some cases trade those resources for other necessities. This dynamic reveals an important survival implication. In environments where traditional economic systems are disrupted, the individuals who hold critical practical resources gain disproportionate influence within their communities. They become stabilizing forces capable of helping others navigate the crisis. This is not about exploiting hardship, but about understanding how value shifts toward problem-solving capability. The first category of items contaminated consistently rises in value damaged during equipment, systemic disruptions, or provide reliable energy becomes indispensable. Human biology in a community struggling to maintain non-negotiable. A healthy adult can survive several weeks without food under certain conditions, but only a few days without water. Municipal water systems normally deliver treated water through complex networks of pumps, pipes, and filtration facilities powered by electricity. When power outages or infrastructure failures interrupt those systems, communities must quickly find alternative ways to obtain safe drinking water. Many people assume that natural water sources such as rivers, lakes, or rainwater automatically provide safe hydration during emergencies. This assumption is dangerously inaccurate. Untreated water frequently contains pathogens including bacteria, parasites, and viruses capable of causing severe illness. Even in regions with relatively clean environments, microorganisms such as Giardia or Cryptosporidium can contaminate water sources through animal activity or upstream waste. Drinking untreated water during a crisis can rapidly lead to dehydration and disease outbreaks within vulnerable populations. The hidden science that transforms water from a risk into a valuable resource lies in purification technology. Tools capable of filtering or disinfecting contaminated water effectively convert unsafe sources into reliable hydration. These technologies range from mechanical filtration systems that remove microscopic organisms to chemical treatments that neutralize pathogens. What makes these items extremely valuable during disruptions is their ability to multiply the usefulness of local water sources. A small purification system can supply safe drinking water for entire families or groups. Evidence supporting the importance of water purification appears in nearly every humanitarian response operation worldwide. Disaster relief agencies consistently prioritize water filtration and sanitation equipment because access to clean water determines whether communities can remain stable during recovery. Regions lacking purification capability often experience secondary health crises as waterborne illnesses spread through populations already weakened by stress and displacement. The survival implication is straightforward yet powerful. Individuals who possess reliable methods for producing clean drinking water hold one of the most valuable resources possible in a disrupted society. Not only does it protect their own health, but it allows them to assist neighbors, build cooperative relationships, and exchange purified water for other necessities. In environments where municipal infrastructure is compromised, the ability to create safe water effectively becomes a form of wealth. Yet water is only the first layer of this shifting value system. As infrastructure failures continue, another critical need begins rising rapidly in importance: energy. Electricity and fuel power, the tools that allow modern societies to function. Without them, communication networks shut down, refrigeration stops, and transportation systems grind to a halt. Communities suddenly face the challenge of operating essential equipment without access to centralized energy systems. The misunderstanding most people have about energy during crises is believing that generators alone solve the problem. Generators are valuable, but they rely on continuous fuel supplies. During prolonged disruptions, fuel deliveries may become irregular or unavailable, limiting how long generators can operate. The hidden science of resilient energy systems therefore lies in renewable power sources that function independently of fuel logistics. Small-scale solar systems illustrate this principle effectively. Solar panels convert sunlight directly into electricity without moving parts or fuel consumption. When paired with battery storage, they can power lights, communication devices, and small appliances even when the grid is offline. What makes these systems uniquely valuable is their ability to generate energy every day without external supply chains. In a prolonged outage scenario, reliable off-grid electricity becomes an extremely scarce resource. Evidence for the value of decentralized energy systems appears repeatedly after major disasters. Communities equipped with solar-powered charging stations often regain communication capability faster than those relying solely on centralized utilities. Portable solar panels can power radios, medical devices, or water purification systems long after fuel-based generators run dry. This reliability transforms renewable energy systems into critical infrastructure at the household level. The survival implications extend beyond personal convenience. Energy enables information flow. A charged radio allows someone to receive emergency broadcasts. A powered phone can reconnect families once communication networks partially recover. Lighting improves safety during nighttime operations. Even simple electrical capability allows communities to maintain coordination and situational awareness during extended disruptions. As the collapse of infrastructure deepens, societies naturally begin identifying individuals who possess these practical capabilities. Those who can generate energy, purify water, or repair essential tools become central figures within emerging local economies. Exchange networks form around them because they provide something that everyone needs but few people can produce independently. But the transformation of value does not stop there. As communities move deeper into survival mode, another category of items begins rising sharply in importance: resources capable of preserving food and preventing waste. Because when supply chains stall and grocery shelves stop refilling, the ability to extend the life of available food becomes just as valuable as the food itself. And that shift introduces the next overlooked resource that can quietly transform from an ordinary household item into one of the most valuable assets anyone could possess during a prolonged societal disruption. The moment food stops moving through supply chains, the stability of an entire society begins to weaken in ways that are rarely visible during normal times. Modern cities operate on an astonishingly thin logistical margin. Most supermarkets carry only a few days' worth of inventory on their shelves because constant delivery trucks replenish stock from regional distribution centers. This system is extraordinarily efficient when transportation, fuel supply, and digital logistics networks operate normally. But the moment that chain is interrupted, whether by infrastructure failure, severe weather, transportation disruption, or economic instability, the illusion of abundance begins fading almost immediately. Shelves empty faster than they can be restocked, refrigerated storage becomes unreliable during power outages, and millions of people suddenly realize how dependent their daily meals are on a fragile logistical machine. The danger here is not simply food shortage, but the speed at which food spoilage can erase available resources. When electricity fails, refrigeration systems inside homes and stores begin warming within hours. Bacteria that were previously slowed by cold temperatures begin multiplying again, gradually rendering perishable foods unsafe to eat. What once appeared to be a plentiful supply can disappear rapidly through spoilage rather than consumption. In large population centers, this creates a strange paradox. Significant quantities of food exist physically, yet much of it becomes unusable because there is no reliable way to preserve it. Many people misunderstand this phase of disruption because they assume that stored canned goods alone represent long-term food security. Shelf-stable foods are extremely valuable, but they are finite resources. Once consumed, they cannot easily be replaced without functioning agriculture, transportation, and manufacturing. The hidden science of resilience, therefore, involves extending the useful life of food resources rather than simply storing them. This is where preservation technologies become unexpectedly valuable. Food preservation has been part of human survival for thousands of years, long before refrigeration existed. Techniques such as dehydration, fermentation, curing, and controlled storage environments slow the biological processes that cause food to spoil. These methods rely on altering moisture levels, acidity, salt concentration, or oxygen exposure to inhibit microbial growth. When used correctly, they allow food to remain edible for weeks, months, or even years depending on the method. In stable modern societies, these techniques often appear optional or outdated. During supply disruptions, they become essential tools for maintaining nutrition. Evidence for the power of preservation methods appears throughout agricultural history. Communities that mastered drying grains, curing meat, fermenting vegetables, or storing root crops in cool environments were able to survive seasonal shortages and unpredictable harvests. Even today, humanitarian food programs frequently rely on dehydrated or preserved foods because they can be transported and stored without continuous refrigeration. The principle is simple. The longer food remains safe to eat, the more stable the food supply becomes. The survival implications of this principle are profound. Individuals who possess the tools and knowledge required to preserve food effectively gain the ability to extend the usefulness of local resources. A harvest that might otherwise spoil within days can feed people for months if preserved correctly. Excess produce can be dried or fermented rather than wasted. Meat from livestock or hunting can be cured instead of lost to decomposition. These processes transform perishable resources into durable supplies, stabilizing nutrition in uncertain conditions. Within an emerging local economy, the ability to preserve food becomes extremely valuable because it multiplies the effectiveness of other resources. Farmers benefit because their crops can be stored longer. Hunters benefit because meat remains usable beyond a few days. Families benefit because they can build food reserves rather than consuming everything immediately. This capability effectively turns preservation tools and knowledge into a form of economic leverage during disruption. Yet even as food preservation stabilizes nutrition, another vulnerability quietly expands beneath the surface of a disrupted society: medical scarcity. In modern healthcare systems, enormous supply chains deliver pharmaceuticals, sterile equipment, and specialized tools to hospitals and pharmacies every day. These supply chains depend on manufacturing plants, global shipping routes, refrigeration networks, and strict quality control. When systemic disruptions interrupt these processes, the availability of medical supplies can decline rapidly. The danger is not that all medicine disappears instantly, but that replacement becomes difficult once local inventories are depleted. Pharmacies normally restock medications through centralized distribution networks. Hospitals receive surgical supplies, antibiotics, and sterile materials from manufacturers operating around the world. If transportation networks slow or production facilities experience disruptions, the steady flow of medical resources begins shrinking. A common misunderstanding during crisis planning is the assumption that hospitals alone will maintain sufficient supplies for entire populations. In reality, healthcare facilities typically operate with carefully calculated inventories designed for efficiency rather than long-term isolation. Stockpiling massive reserves of every medication would be financially and logistically impractical. Instead, hospitals rely on predictable deliveries to replenish supplies. When those deliveries are interrupted, even advanced healthcare systems can begin experiencing shortages. The hidden science that determines which medical resources remain valuable during disruptions lies in the concept of preventative care. Preventing infection, stabilizing injuries, and maintaining sanitation dramatically reduces the demand for advanced medical treatment. Simple medical supplies such as antiseptics, bandages, wound dressings, and sterilization materials can prevent minor injuries from developing into serious infections. In environments where hospitals may be overwhelmed or difficult to access, these tools become extremely important. Evidence supporting this principle appears consistently in emergency medicine research. Field hospitals, disaster response teams, and humanitarian aid organizations place enormous emphasis on sanitation and wound management. Preventing contamination of injuries dramatically reduces mortality rates in environments where advanced surgical care is limited. Historically, the introduction of basic antiseptic practices transformed battlefield medicine and civilian healthcare alike by preventing infections before they could spread. The survival implication is clear. Communities that maintain access to fundamental medical supplies and sanitation practices remain healthier and more stable during disruptions. Individuals who possess these supplies can provide immediate assistance for injuries and illnesses, preventing conditions from worsening while professional medical services recover. In a local exchange economy, these resources quickly become highly valued because they protect the most fundamental asset any community possesses: human health. But as health systems strain and food supply chains falter, another dynamic begins shaping the survival landscape: information scarcity. During stable periods, information flows continuously through digital networks. News updates, weather forecasts, emergency alerts, and logistical coordination all depend on electricity and telecommunications infrastructure. When power outages or communication disruptions occur, access to reliable information becomes limited. The misunderstanding most people carry about communication during crises is assuming that smartphones will remain functional indefinitely. In reality, smartphones depend on cellular towers, data centers, and network infrastructure powered by electricity. Even when towers have backup batteries, those reserves typically last only several hours before needing generator support. Once batteries drain and fuel supplies run out, communication networks begin shutting down sector by sector. The hidden science behind resilient communication lies in technologies that operate independently from large-scale infrastructure. Radio systems, particularly those capable of receiving broadcast signals over long distances, provide one of the most reliable methods for maintaining situational awareness during emergencies. Unlike internet-based communication, radio transmissions can travel across vast regions using relatively simple equipment powered by small batteries or solar panels. Evidence of the reliability of radio communication appears across decades of emergency management practice. Disaster response agencies frequently rely on radio networks because they remain functional even when other systems fail. Amateur radio operators have historically provided critical communication links after earthquakes, hurricanes, and blackouts when conventional networks were disabled. The physics behind radio propagation allows signals to travel long distances without requiring complex digital infrastructure. The survival implications are substantial. In environments where information becomes scarce, individuals capable of receiving reliable broadcasts gain access to situational awareness that others lack. They can monitor weather developments, emergency instructions, and regional conditions that influence decision-making. Information itself becomes a form of currency because it allows communities to plan effectively rather than reacting blindly to rumors or speculation. As infrastructure disruptions extend deeper into everyday life, the pattern becomes increasingly clear. Items that create stability, clean water systems, energy generation tools, food preservation equipment, medical supplies, and reliable communication devices begin rising rapidly in value. They are not glamorous possessions, yet they directly address the challenges people face when modern systems stop functioning. But as communities adapt to these conditions, another layer of value emerges that is often overlooked entirely. Physical tools capable of repairing equipment, constructing shelters, and maintaining essential infrastructure begin determining which communities recover quickly and which struggle to rebuild. Because when the machines that power modern life begin breaking down, and no replacement parts are arriving anytime soon, the individuals who possess the tools and knowledge to repair them become some of the most valuable people in the entire economy of survival.